So please take your posture with an awareness of the body being settled, balanced, at ease, and at the same time energized. So if you're sitting upright, bring a straightness to your spine as well as a balance to the body. Bringing an awareness of this dedicated time, this sacred time to be present with yourself, supported by the three refuges, the refuges of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The refuges as not just ideas, but as present within yourself. The inner refuges of our innate awareness of the experience and recognition that we can let go of suffering. That suffering can be released. Experience of that in our practice. And the resonance of Sangha. In the body, holding the presence of those who we're meditating with in this moment. In our hearts, knowing that we're together. And all of the ancestors who have preserved this lineage, kept it alive, expressed it in new ways, in different circumstances. And entering into just a sense of the embodiedness, of our mindfulness, presence, awareness. With this breath, with this sensation, we can once again take refuge. It's a refuge which is not a closing off or a shutting out. It's a refuge which is a coming home. we may recognize this for just a moment. This sense of sufficiency, okayness, not needing anything more, completeness. I'm going to guide this meditation on the 5 hindrances, which are called hindrances because, not because they're bad, they're human experiences, but they lead us to believe that somehow we are cut off from this well-being, this openness, this sense of completeness that is our true nature, is our kind of our ground. And there are different words that are used to describe these, but I'll use desire or craving, so sense desire or craving, and aversion or ill will, sloth, torpor. So those are the first 3. And then restlessness and doubt. And I'd like to invite you to explore how these 5 energies, these hindrances, are experienced viscerally in the body, energetically, and also in the mind, if that's where they predominate. But it's really helpful to begin to recognize how these experiences manifest energetically, so that we can become familiar with them. Just as you might notice somebody maybe in your workplace or in your family that you tend to get set off by, tend to trigger you, and you just bring a little bit more mindfulness, or you just say, I'm gonna just be aware. I'm going to recognize this pattern and see if I can not get kind of hooked, get caught. And so maybe when I was talking in the beginning of the meditation and I was describing and inviting the quality of openness, the quality of being settled, maybe there was maybe not, but I'm just putting this forward as a possibility. Maybe there was a kind of a reaching out, a reaching towards something like, oh, that's not what I have. I want that, or just energetically leaning towards something. Or maybe you can remember something that you desired. Could be a sensory experience. It could be a piece of cake, an extra dessert, a person, an experience, a place, wanting to be somewhere different, wanting to have something that you don't have. So that leaning into, energetically, kind of leaning towards something. So I'm inviting you to activate a memory that you might have of doing that, of feeling that something is going to make me feel good. There's some pleasant experience or object I want to have. It's going to make me feel good. And just see if you can disconnect the visualization of that object or person or thing or place and just tune into how that feels in the body. And notice, what is that experience of wanting? Wanting what's not there. And notice what happens as we just allow that energy of wanting to be present in a mindful, warm, allowing space of knowing. What happens to the wanting? Maybe it shifts, maybe it dissolves, maybe it intensifies for a moment. Teaching on impermanence assures us that it will move through, it will pass away, it will fade and dissolve. If we just allow it to be there without feeding the wanting with more thoughts, planning, visualizing or imagining how we can get it or what it is we want, planning and so on. If we just allow that feeling of wanting to be known, to be acknowledged, to be received, what happens? And to whatever extent there is some space, the Buddha says that we need to get to know that space as well. We need to know not wanting as well as wanting. What is it to not want? To have freedom from wanting. To be liberated. And kind of the other side, the flip side of wanting, is wanting what is there to not be there. So wanting that person who cut in line or cut in front of you when you're driving or bumped you or some experience that you don't like, that you don't want, wanting that to not be there. So we call that sometimes ill will or aversion. And there's many, many different ways that that can arise in our lives. And so I invite you to remember, to bring to mind through your memory some occasion when aversion ignited in you. Somebody did something, said something, something happened that you didn't like, that you didn't want. And I suggest that we keep it to more subtle expressions, just so that because we're working with them in meditation. So not a huge dramatic event, but something more kind of everyday, ordinary, unpleasant experience. Somebody annoying, something annoying. And then in the same way, just feel that, like, see if you can disconnect from the image, the actual event, the person, place, occurrence, and just feel in the body. What is that experience of not wanting what is there? Not wanting that sensory experience of hearing somebody say something or seeing somebody or somebody bumping you or stepping on your toe, physically or metaphorically. What is that? Is it like a contraction? Does it feel like a heat? How is that known in the body? How does the body express that? And how does the mind express that, if that's more where you're, if that's where it's more accessible? And in that openness, just turning into it, opening into that contraction, into that rejection of not wanting, energetically being expressed in the body. And noticing what happens, being mindful of what happens. Does the place of contraction relax a little bit? You might even bring a gentle, mindful connection to that place of contraction. However, the energetic experience of aversion is expressed in the body. What happens when we give it space without getting hooked, without planning, without getting drawn into the story or drama? And if there's a bit more space, a bit more openness, mindfully inhabiting that, enjoying that openness, that momentary liberation from aversion, from the suffering of aversion. And the third of the hindrances is sloth and torpor. So that's a kind of a dulling down, a zoning out, a spacing out of the mind. And this can happen for many reasons. And sometimes they're physical reasons. Sometimes the body is just tired, exhausted. Sometimes the mind is tired and overwhelmed. And so we space out, we close down. So for many people, this is a very persistent hindrance in meditation. It can be coming from avoidance, coming from aversion, and a habit of just closing down and turning away or spacing out. And so it can be more tricky to deal with because it actually closes down our capacity to be aware. And so it's helpful to really get to know this. And if it's not physical exhaustion, to learn how to work with it, or sickness, of course, can also cause a need to sleep. But if it's a habitual turning off, closing down, can be a rigidifying of the mind. And so perhaps, just remembering when this occurred, maybe in your meditation practice or occurred in your daily life, or just feeling like the body just wants to turn off, shut down. The mind wants to shut down, tune out, sometimes going into fantasy, going into dream. See if you can recall that quality of closing down, a kind of heaviness. And in the same way, bring mindfulness to this. Bring awareness to this. Sometimes working with sloth and torpor, There are actual physical things that we can do, like straightening the spine, opening the eyes, activating the mind in a way, like feeling different touch points in the body, or noting the breath, like saying in, out. So these are all activations that we can do. So explore this for a moment in your practice, the recognizing of how the mind moves into sloth and torpor, and how it can awaken, how it can find some brightness, some energy, bringing more energy. Sloth and torpor is a diminishment of energy, and the remedy is to become mindful of it and raise the energy. And then just moving through these a bit more quickly. Restlessness is kind of the other side of sloth and torpor, where we might feel that we can't settle, that we can't, like our energy is just all over the place. It's bouncing around. Thoughts and just a feeling of that we can't sit still, we want to move around. And again, just noticing the quality of that energy and giving space to it. Again, being mindful, recognizing it. Ah, there's restlessness. If restlessness is very present in our practice, sometimes it can even be helpful to get up and do walking meditation, to allow the energy to move through the body mindfully. Even if we begin by walking quickly, letting the arms swing. So bringing just an openness. That's another way, a more active way of opening into the experience of restlessness. And finally, doubt, the fifth hindrance. Is a kind of a wanting to know that the mind can't, that keeps the mind from settling. It's a questioning. Can I do this? Is this practice for me? Am I doing the right practice? Should I be chanting? Should I be doing Tai Chi? Should I be meditating on my chakras, or doing Vipassana or Anapanasati, or what form should I be doing? And so self-doubt, doubting the practice, wanting to know. And so there's a kind of a trusting this capacity to be with what is. Be with our experience in the moment. Opening into the doubt, opening into the not knowing. Allowing it, accepting it, seeing the suffering of it, and trusting the moment, trusting this inner capacity to be with what is, that this moment will unfold into the next. And so all of these hindrances, so-called hindrances, are, as you see, also doorways. They're doorways to wisdom, they're doorways to insight, they're doorways to compassion, they're doorways to trust and openness. They're gifts, really. They're the ways that we learn to awaken in our humanity. And so as we bring this practice to a close, I invite you to dedicate the blessings, the goodness of this practice to those you love, those you care about, those you know, those you don't know, all beings who are suffering, beings who are rejoicing, beings who are being born and beings who are dying, beings who are ill and beings who are well, beings near and far, old and young, to all beings everywhere and to the whole earth that is our home and the ground of our life. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free.